I'm telling you now, this is like Christmas for me. I'm so excited. I'm going to ask so many questions. It's such an exciting time to be in the world of artificial intelligence. I founded AI Ireland about 6 years ago, and literally the last couple of weeks are just going with so many updates, so many incredible breakthroughs. It's just so exciting, genuinely so excited. We got 30 minutes where we're going to try to come up with the best questions to ask this incredible panel today. I'm going to start off with Omar. You're working in NASA. Yeah. Every kid's dream to work in NASA, particularly me and my kids. Tell me about some of the innovations that you're using artificial intelligence in space.
No, the beautiful thing about artificial intelligence is really across all the sectors, the same technology. So one of the main applications that I'm excited about is using vehicles, autonomous vehicles, for example. We've been using them on the surface of Mars. And the challenge is, once you start getting away from Earth, the signal takes so long to go back and forth, so we have to depend on an autonomous system to be able to do these kind of things. So their autonomous system working right now. We're going to develop the next generation to make them even at a higher level of accuracy and fidelity. And they will be able to do decisions, analyze things completely on their own without having instructions from a human. Before we send humans to Mars, we need to build a habitat and have everything ready for them. And we've been doing research trying to build habitable structures with 3D printers. The challenge is, if you make a small mistake at the base and you keep going, the whole thing will collapse. So how do we make sure that they're built properly? So we use visual recognition with artificial intelligence, and if there is any issue, we can correct and then continue building the structures in a proper way, right? So in addition to this, we're using it to discover new planets. There is a mission called Kepler, for example, and it looks for habitable planets. And habitable planets in the habitable zone is like planets like Earth, about the same distance from a star, about the same size. And the way we use artificial intelligence is we look, for example, if you have a star and the planet is going, crossing the star in the orbit, there is a slight, very small dim in the brightness of the sun, of the star. And that tells you there's a planet, depending on the frequency. You can tell the distance, depending on so many things. So AI is helping us with that. And quickly, we have 3 missions, for example. We had the Hubble, we have James Webb, and we're working on Roman. And each one of them is orders of magnitude more data. And without AI, it's going to be hard to make sense out of these kind of things. And the last one is in aeronautics as well, because NASA's in the aeronautics field. And in the future, the skies will be filled with flying vehicles, with drones. How do you control the flight control systems of the future? So we're doing a lot of research, and what's interesting, I've been looking at recently as well, there is a phenomenon called starling murmurations, where you find thousands of birds flying everywhere, and flying together and doing formations, but they never hit each other, they never collide. So I wonder if one day we'll be able to learn what, and maybe AI can help us with this. How can we learn how these things communicate and synchronize in such an incredible way and translate that into production?
Wonderful. My kids said, I have to ask you one question. Are there aliens?
Yeah.
I had to ask.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at the vastness of space. We're not talking about millions or billions. We're talking about trillions with a T of planets. Statistically, and if you look at the Drake equation and so on, there's a high probability of having some forms of life somewhere else from a statistics perspective, right? And life doesn't mean humans. Could be organisms, could be microbial life, could be intelligence life, could be sub-intelligence, could be above us, could be the same level of us, but maybe if some civilizations evolved maybe 10,000 years before us, a million years before us. Look how much progress we've made in the last 100 years. I mean, from going on horses to being on other planets. So imagine 10,000 years from now, for example. So the bottom line is yes or no. I mean, that will be seen in the future. But statistically speaking, there's high probability of having some forms of life in the universe.
My kids are 4, 8, and 10. I'm going to tell them yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, you've worked for incredible companies like Oculus. You've done work with Guitar Hero. You've even been on set at Terminator 2. Tell me about some of the applications that you're seeing in AI that are really exciting.
Well, I've spent the last 4 or 5 years working on defense-related things, and these are indigenous projects without contract to any government. One of the things we worked on was drone abatement, how to get rid of these things. In my view, and also Musk's view, these things are going to change the nature of warfare fairly quickly. They already have. How to make them go away, and this was the issue we were dealing with. I watched, there was a parade in Saudi Arabia, and a drone with an artillery shell or munition on it flew into the crowd. So how to get rid of that problem. You can take out the radio link, but if it's autonomous, there's not much you can do. And this is the issue. You've seen these drone shows where these things are in patterns or something. They create a comic book character or something. It's just amazing. I have no idea how that works, by the way, but this is the thing. I also worked in crowd control devices also, not such related to AI, but that's part of the defense stuff. And we were working with the Air Force briefly, but decided not to go through with it because it was too much. I'm retired, and it's too much work. So that's my view. We built an autonomous EV at my facility. I have an R&D facility I own. And the idea was you would send this thing on missions, and it would go on off-road, on terrain, and find its way to where it's supposed to go, and then leave and come back, creep along the ground very quietly. Of course, that would require some intelligence of some sort, so these are the things I'm working on. If you're asking me, here's the very dangerous thing, is like, when you're, let's say you're in the military, you're a general, let's say, just for say, it has to be on your conscience that you're gonna send out a person potentially to be killed in combat. It's got to weigh on you. I know it does. But when it's a drone, you don't have this conscious attachment to it, you know? That's dangerous because you'll just push them out there and send them on a mission, and the consequences you don't know immediately. So I think it's going to change the nature of warfare for sure. There has to be a rule set around it, the use of these things. I know they're being used in Ukraine and Russia right now. That's what I've been working on the past 4 or 5 years, and other defense-related stuff too.
Thank you, Jack. Emerald, when we think about governance and some of the work that you're involved in, we've got the EU AI Act that's now passed. We've got 6 months prohibitive AI has to be gone outside of certain use cases. And then over the next 12 to 18 months, we've got the applications where you're going to have the innovation and regulation coming together, and the sheriffs in town. What advice do you offer to organizations who are either introducing AI already or about to embark on this journey?
Well, yeah, we always have to discuss the European AI Act, particularly because it was only passed last week by the European Parliament. I think there's a couple of things, right? I think it's really important to look at regulation, not just as something that's like stifling innovation. I really think that's the wrong way to look at this. I think we can have innovation, responsible AI, and privacy. It's a positive-sum game, right? And I think we learned a lot from the GDPR with privacy by design becoming much more of a mainstream concept. I think we see much more of that. But I think regulation can play a really important role in establishing trust within the public. I think it helps balancing innovation with the right safeguards, because of course, it's a very exciting time to be in this space, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's so cool. But at the same time, we can't ignore that there are potential harms that already exist that could be exacerbated and solidified by AI. Now, in terms of the advice that I would give, I think we had a great conversation about this yesterday. We had like this all-women panel that I was allowed to chair on AI, and particularly on very practical advice for AI governance. And I do just want to repeat a message I gave there. I think we're starting with like a really, really strong foundation through the work that has been done for privacy and data governance and human rights and security. I think a lot of people are, because it's moving so fast and people feel a little bit unsure, they think, oh, we're starting from scratch, everything is new. But not everything is new, and that should give you all at least some comfort. There's definitely work ahead, but I think we've built a lot of things over the years that will really stand to us now as professionals, as organizations. So I think adapting what you have, so a lot of organizations, privacy teams are taking over AI governance. The reason for that is privacy infrastructures operationally in organizations lend themselves really well to being expanded in scope, because personal data was so broadly defined. Not everything is personal data, but a lot of data is because of that broad definition, which we've now learned from the GDPR and other laws. So I would say, build on what you have, learn what needs to be adapted, and just, don't panic and run at it. I think that's really important. I think the worst thing to do is go, oh no, there's this big regulation, we're afraid, we don't know what to do. And the GDPR was a bit like that. I worked on a lot of kind of propping up privacy programs for different organizations back in the day. And it was mainly because people were confused, they waited too long. But I think the best thing to do when you see something that you're a little bit worried about is to run at it, and it becomes very much manageable.
Omar, we've got regulation, which, and we've got the law, but then ethics are different.
Yeah.
Tell me about ethics in space, and how do you start to view that as an organization within NASA?
Yeah. No, ethics is fundamental to every single thing you're going to be working on. As a matter of fact, one of the first documents on artificial intelligence published by NASA was a framework for ethical implementations of AI. I think it was published in 2021, and that tells you how much emphasis we're putting on these. It's starting from basic functions, like human resources. You need to make sure you're not making any bias, you're not making any unfair decisions in hiring people, in promoting people. And going to space, for example, once we start having astronauts going to long missions, there's going to be a lot of data being collected, so privacy comes into question. So you have to be careful with all these kind of things. Once we go into even further, into the, for example, you go to a cave or a lava tube on the surface of the moon, for example, and something happens, and you have an autonomous system that you're working with it, and that system is the only hope you have to save you, for example. If there's multiple people, and that system can only save one person, who does it select? I mean, this is something, it becomes so complex. In my opinion, sometimes ethical issues are more complex than technology issues. And just going back also to the fundamental laws we have for robotics and autonomy. So the Asimov laws, which we've abided by for a long time, it tells you that a robot might not injure a human. But then if a robot has to do surgery on you to save you, it has to do an incision. That's hurting a human. Even though it's not for the bad, it's for the better good, but the definition, it has a conflict in the whole concept, right? So we'll have to revisit the fundamentals of everything we'll be looking at and see how they can evolve with artificial intelligence. But it's at the core of every single thing we do. It has to be fair, transparent, accountable, safe, secure, explainable. And I think not only NASA, but I think most organizations are starting to pay attention, and we're making progress in that field.
Yeah, because just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it.
Absolutely.
And there's a balance between a lot of pressure to innovate, but then also make a decision, well, what's the right thing to do?
That's the most delicate balance you need to do. I mean, too much regulations, you will stifle creativity. You can't do much with it. And we can't, especially in a field like artificial intelligence, where advantages and disadvantages are substantially amplified compared to anything else. We need to have some kind of governance, proper ethics, governance, and regulations at the same time that keeps innovation and creativity flourishing. And also we need to do regulations and policies that are adaptable, because things will move and change very fast. And if we do archaic ways and rigid policy and regulations, they're not going to be amendable to what's the progression and the fast progression. So we need to think about how do we develop frameworks that are adaptable, progressive, and encompassing. And they need to be not only done by certain segment. When you're coming up with ethics consideration, you need to have engineers, you need to have philosophers, you need to have policymakers, you need to have an abundance of diversity. Diversity is going to be what's going to give you the power and the best regulation possible.
Yeah, one of the best ways, and I've reviewed over 500 applications of AI, is the teams that have an assumption log. So when you're designing it and you've got privacy by design, you're kind of leaving your assumptions at the side to say, well, I'm assuming this.
Yeah.
And if you've got multiple different types of stakeholders who've got different types of perspectives on things, they can actually pull you up and go, well, that's actually a crazy assumption you're making here. Let's try to take a step back. Jack, when we look at commercially viable projects that actually make a difference, but ultimately have to generate return on investment. What advice would you offer to companies going in this area, working on projects, making sure they stay away from the wouldn't it be cool snare that doesn't necessarily move the dial forward, from your experience in this world?
Well, to be honest with you, my success is built on other people's success, so I can't claim that I'm an engineer, a technical guy, the founder of great commercial ideas, because it wouldn't be the case. However, the things I have worked on in my career were successful, mostly because I'm connected. And when I go to do a job, I know people. So video game is what I work in. I work in entertainment. It's very small. Everyone knows each other. In the studios, like, not a marketing guy, so I don't do the marketing part of it. To your earlier question to Omar, I think that there's necessary regulation that needs to be done to prevent the messaging to society, false messaging. People can be taught to believe things if it's repeated often enough. And this is an area that needs to be looked at for sure. I think it can drive society in the wrong direction. AI could do this, autonomously. You could, have evil intent. So it's a very dark thing, though, right? But I think there is necessary regulation, and it's coming in the States probably pretty soon. And, the time I've spent on it, working with the AI, it does. I don't work with ChatGPT. I'm more at the base level, the math behind it. And I know Wolfram did a great write-up on ChatGPT. But my thing is like the mathematics part of it is what I do. So I think for video games, I'll just give you an example. Grand Theft Auto 5, which is a very popular game, came out 2013. Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out. It's a great game. If you like video games, I like video games. So they had the buildings, the entire city was done by artists using AutoCAD and texturing and all this, all the assets of the building. And you could use Midjourney to generate those buildings fairly easily. And there's a great application for AI in video games in that sense. To create an asset for a game is complicated. It takes a lot of training, and the producers, the artist people who oversee these things, they're very picky about the way things look, of course. So I think there's a great opportunity to use AI in video games for that. But video games are not using AI right now. To my knowledge, they're not. And the reason is it's like a movie. When we were reviewing storyboards, like a producer comes in or an idea comes in and he gives you a storyboard. It's actually drawing it. This is what goes on in the game. It has to play like a movie to be entertaining, and it has to have a social component now. It's very popular. The graphics part isn't as important. It isn't. It's how the game plays. Could AI be used for that? I suppose it could. But it's just not done that way currently, just the way the industry works. It's a little old-fashioned.
Omar, how do you put the finger on the pulse with the culture that NASA has built up? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of discretionary effort. You've got a big mission, a vision, and I always remember that John F. Kennedy speaking about the cleaner, where she's helping putting people on the moon. What's that magic sauce? What's it like to be involved in that environment?
Yeah. So you need to look at things in a very, very different perspective. Culture, actually, you can come up with the best products and nobody will use them if they don't believe in them. So there is two elements. You need to create an environment in which innovation and culture is allowed to exist and flourish organically, provide all the facilities, everything else that allows that to happen, but also convince the users that this is actually good for them. And I've seen multiple cases where there is no way I'm going to use that. And then you sit down with them, you explain to them the value, how it's helping them. It's not going to take your job, it's going to make your job much, much better right now. And they start believing in it, right? So, and I like to take analogies from different places. And the other day I was watching a program on Netflix, a cooking show. And they were showing this gentleman from Japan. He was making the best soy sauce in the world. And they were telling him, what's your secret? How come you were able to do this when nobody else was? And that guy said, well, I didn't do anything. I just created the proper environment, and the microorganisms did everything for me. And I immediately said, well, this is exactly what we need to do. We need to create the proper environment. And people are magical. People create incredible stuff in different organizations. We need to also cross-pollinate with different sectors, with government, academia, industry, nonprofits. And if you look at a forest is not individualized trees. It's an ecosystem of trees, and they're connected with fungus. Underneath it, they communicate, they do everything. So we need to look into all these kind of things. And sometimes I look at it like there's an overview effect when astronauts go to space. They don't see borders, they don't see countries. They see this beautiful, incredible planet that we have, Earth. And it changes the personality completely. They come with a whole different appreciation, different perspective about Earth. And I'm thinking, it's the same thing. When we're trying to develop things, come up with strategy, create cultures, we need to pull ourselves from our day-to-day field, get away from our domain, our groupthink mentality, start looking what's happening technologically across other sectors, what's happening geopolitically, what's happening technologically, and then come back to your domain with all this incredible knowledge and cross-pollination with multiple sectors. And then you come back and start putting the strategy, how to change the culture, how to change things. And believe me, it will be a very different perspective, and it will get much more advantages by having this holistic overview with things.
Thank you. Emerald, people talk a lot about jobs being removed, but there's a lot of jobs now being created. Talk to me about the opportunity for people to become leads in governance and how kind of more that ethical role starts to shape, and how people can start to get into that kind of prompt engineering and suddenly these roles for the future. And when I say future, it's almost like today. Tell us about the aspiring leaders that want to get into this area, and what advice would you share with them?
I love this question. It's one of my favorite topics. And Omar touched on it, actually. He was saying we need diverse perspectives, we need people with different backgrounds, we need all sorts of people, because AI is going to affect pretty much everything, right? We're already really feeling that. I'm sure you've been to many great sessions here today and yesterday that also touched on this. And I think there's so many different roles you could take on. And I think people are often wondering where to start, and you may already be involved, right, in some way. I mean, yesterday we were having this conversation that in the dialogue on responsible AI, they're pulling in philanthropists and people philosophers and people who studied history, and that they're not the first things you normally think about. And I think another thing is, and I always really try to lead with humility, I really don't think that there's anyone that has everything figured out yet. So I think that we really need to collaborate and work together and bring different types of expertise. So I think this was one thing that I learned from my entrepreneurial days, and I had this great CEO that used to mentor me, and he was I really respected him. He was a really admired and well-known person, and I kind of said, I always feel like an imposter. Does it ever stop? And he was like, no, but it's a good thing because it keeps you on your toes. And that kind of brings me to this thing of, I guess, continuous learning, because every day I wake up, I think, oh, yesterday I thought I had it figured out, and now everything's changed again. And I think just to acknowledge to yourself that pretty much everyone's feeling that, and it's okay, we will figure it out together. And it's also one of the reasons myself and Shoshana, who's my co-founder with Women in AI Governance, why we created this community. Because I think I initially created a LinkedIn group, and all of a sudden we had 1,200 members in weeks. We didn't do any marketing, it just happened. And it just said to me, everyone's feeling the same thing. Everyone just wants to have a place to go where they can talk about this stuff, and kind of like we're all doing today. And our mission really is to create this inclusive environment and a true community where our shared expertise can fuel advancements in governance. So if I were to say anything today is, try to not feel this level of discomfort, run at it, talk to each other, join communities, learn as much as you can, and as often, get up at 4 a.m. like you do to learn just before work, and then just keep going. And I think, we always have challenges, and I think together we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really important point, because if you don't have trust as the foundation for any of the AI applications that you've got, you're not going to get it rolled out across enterprises. It can be as innovative as you want, but ultimately that has to be there. From a digital dexterity perspective, Jack, how important is it for all stakeholders, young and old, to go on this journey for us to really embrace AI?
Well, I'll get into that in a second. There's, the world of finance, stock trading, predicting the trends in stock and assets such as that AI could certainly have a benefit for. Just a quick story. I used to work with a guy from Renaissance Technology. He wrote all their algorithms, and he was a game and wagering guy. This is his PhD guy, right? And they've never had a bad year. So just think what AI could do in that area. Buying stocks, buying shares of companies, predicting what the company's going. There's a level of expertise that a machine certainly could do. And so this is my statement. So there has to be, again, an ethical component to this. Omar mentioned this, and some regulation wrapped around it to prevent it from being abused. And so this is my sort of thing with AI. Thanks.
Omar, what are you most excited about with AI? And you've got 20 seconds to tell me, maybe 30. What's kind of really exciting?
No, I think artificial intelligence is going to have so much impact on humanity in ways we've never seen in the history of humanity. And the problem is it could have incredible disadvantages and challenges we've never seen because everything is substantially amplified. So our role, and nobody can do it by themselves, it has to be a collective effort between all of us, right? How do we work collectively to be able to diminish the disadvantages and completely amplify the advantages? And we're talking about medicine, and education, and economic models. It will change our lives in ways it will be incredibly positive if we can know how to manage the positivity and diminish the negativity of artificial intelligence. I think overall, we could have an amazing things for humanity, no question.
Emerald?
I think we should all, I think there's so much opportunity ahead of us, and I think we should all be really excited about what's coming. And also, like I said earlier, run at it and know that everyone's feeling the same thing and come at it with confidence. I think, we'll figure it out together.
Yeah. Now I'm going to ask, because we've got less than a minute, I just want a yes/no answer on it. Is AGI coming, Jack?
I'm sorry?
Is AGI coming?
What's AGI?
Well, it's like AI that can think like we can and talk and engage like us from a human perspective.
Yes.
Omar?
I think by 2030, we'll definitely have AGI.
So we've got it 2030, it's coming. Yeah?
That's my goal.
Okay,
yeah.
Emerald?
I have to say yes after these two guys, because they know way more about this than I do. So I'll go with yes.
Okay. So there you have it. We got 40 seconds left for you guys just to think about that AGI is on the way here, and then the opportunities and challenges that's going to bring. Can everybody just have a big, massive round of applause for our panelists today? That was so much fun.
Thank you.
If you found that interesting, there's over 150 episodes on the AI Ireland podcast that showcase AI on the island of Ireland, and over 500 applications of AI applied across our case studies for the AI Awards, which is on the 26th of November. Outside of that, have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.